You need a home, and we need a mommy. Those 9 words, spoken by 3 5-year-olds to a stranger shivering at a bus stop on Christmas Eve, would shatter 2 broken lives and rebuild them into something neither thought possible. This is the story of a single father drowning in responsibility, a woman who lost everything, and 3 little girls who refused to let either of them face the world alone. What happens when desperation meets compassion? When rock bottom becomes the foundation for something beautiful? You're about to find out. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Daddy, look! That lady is sad. Trevor Turner's heart sank the moment he heard Riley's voice pierce the cold December air. He turned to see his 3 daughters, Riley, Zoe, and Ivy, standing frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the bus stop bench. A woman sat there, hunched over, her body shaking with sobs she was trying desperately to muffle. Her clothes were layered, but worn. 2 black garbage bags sat at her feet like the saddest luggage in the world. Girls, come on, we shouldn't... But they were already moving. Trevor watched helpless as his 3 triplets ran toward the stranger and threw their arms around her legs. The woman's head snapped up, her tear-streaked face a portrait of shock and exhaustion.
"It's okay," Ivy said, with the innocent confidence only a child possesses. "You don't have to be sad." "We could be friends," Zoe offered, her small hand patting the woman's knee. Riley looked up with those devastating blue eyes and said the words that would change everything. "You could be our mommy. We need one. And you need a home, right?" The woman's face crumbled. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks, but this time they looked different. Less like despair, more like disbelief. Trevor approached cautiously. "I'm so sorry. They don't usually—" "No," she whispered, her voice raw. "Don't apologize. This is the kindest thing anyone's done for me in months." She tried to smile through her tears, but her body betrayed her. Trevor saw the exact moment her eyes rolled back. He lunged forward, catching her just before she hit the pavement. "Girls, stay close to me." Trevor adjusted his grip, feeling how light she was. Too light. How long had it been since she'd eaten? Riley tugged his jacket. "Is she going to be okay?" Trevor looked down at the unconscious woman in his arms, at her hollow cheeks and chapped lips, at the way even unconsciousness couldn't erase the exhaustion from her face. "I don't know, sweetheart," he said honestly, "but we're going to help her find out." Carrying a stranger up 3 flights of stairs while 3 5-year-olds peppered you with questions was something Trevor had never imagined doing. But then again, the last 5 years had been full of things he'd never imagined. Like becoming a single father to triplets. Like learning to braid hair from YouTube tutorials at 2 in the morning. Like understanding that love and exhaustion could somehow occupy the exact same space in your chest. He laid the woman carefully on their worn couch and covered her with the blue blanket his late wife Vanessa had crocheted. The girls clustered around her like protective angels. "What's her name?" Zoe asked. "I don't know yet." "Why doesn't she have a home?" Ivy pressed. "I don't know that either, baby." "Can she stay with us?" Riley's question was so full of hope it physically hurt. Trevor looked at the stranger on his couch. Really looked. Beneath the grime and grief, she seemed young, maybe late 20s. Her long brown hair, though tangled, had been recently washed. Her nails were broken but clean. She had been trying to maintain dignity in circumstances designed to strip it away. Something in Trevor's chest tightened. He recognized that look, that desperate attempt to hold yourself together when everything around you was falling apart. He'd worn that same look for the first year after Vanessa died. "Just for tonight," Trevor said, making a decision that felt both reckless and inevitable. "She needs rest. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." "Tomorrow's Christmas," announced Riley. "Then I guess we're having a guest for Christmas."
Trevor said softly. The apartment was quiet. The girls had finally fallen asleep after an hour of whispered conspiracy about their new friend. Trevor sat in the kitchen, nursing cold coffee and watching the woman sleep. He should call someone. Social services, maybe. A shelter. Something. But the shelters were full. He knew that much from the news. And something about the way his daughters had gravitated toward this stranger made him hesitate. They'd been asking about having a mother for months now. Not constantly, but enough that Trevor felt the weight of what he couldn't give them. Riley had cried last week when she couldn't figure out how to do a French braid for school picture day. Zoe had stopped inviting friends over because she was embarrassed that their apartment was always messy. Ivy had started drawing pictures of families with a mom and dad, always making sure Trevor saw them. They were good kids. Great kids. But they were grieving something they'd never even had. Trevor's eyes burned. He rubbed them roughly, willing himself not to break down. Not tonight. Not when someone else's crisis demanded his attention. The woman stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and confused. Then clarity hit, followed immediately by panic. She sat up too quickly, swaying. Where am I?" "You safe," Trevor said immediately, staying seated so he wouldn't seem threatening. "Your daughters," she said slowly, memory returning. They ambushed you with kindness." "Yeah, they do that." Trevor offered a small smile. "I'm sorry, they shouldn't have overwhelmed you." "Please don't apologize." Her voice cracked. "They saw me. Really saw me. Do you know how rare that is?" Trevor didn't know what to say to that. She wrapped her arms around herself. "I should go. I've already imposed. It's 2 a.m, and it's snowing." Trevor stood slowly, moving to the kitchen. "At least let me make you something to eat before you decide anything." He didn't wait for permission. He pulled out eggs, bread, butter. His hands moved on autopilot, the same routine he'd perfected for midnight comfort meals when the girls had nightmares. The woman watched him with an expression Trevor couldn't quite read. Suspicion, maybe, or disbelief that kindness without strings could exist. "I'm Alicia," she said finally. "Alicia Jameson. Nice to meet you, Alicia." Trevor cracked eggs into a pan. "When's the last time you ate?" 2 days? Maybe 3? I lose track." Trevor's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice neutral. "Well, we're fixing that right now." He made scrambled eggs and toast, nothing fancy, but he watched Alicia devour it like it was a 5-star meal. She ate slowly, deliberately, like someone who'd learned that eating too fast after prolonged hunger made you sick. When she finished, tears were streaming silently down her face again. "Thank you," she whispered. "You didn't have to." "Yeah, I did. Look, I don't know your story, and you don't have to tell me if you don't want to, but it's Christmas Eve, and you just passed out from exhaustion and hunger, and my daughters are currently having dreams about being heroes. So how about this? You stay the night. Tomorrow, we figure out next steps. No pressure, no strings." Alicia studied him for a long moment. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" He thought about that. About Vanessa, who'd never met a person she couldn't love. About the community that had surrounded him after she died, bringing casseroles and babysitting offers. About how grief had taught him that kindness was the only thing that made the world bearable. "Because someone would have done it for me," he said simply, "and because those 3 girls in there have better instincts than most adults I know."
Alicia's laugh was small, but real. "They're special. They really are." Trevor stood, grabbing a pillow and extra blanket from the hallway closet. "Bathrooms down the hall. There's a toothbrush under the sink, never opened. Help yourself to anything you need. And Alicia?" She looked up. "You're safe here. I promise." For the first time since she'd arrived, Alicia's shoulders dropped from around her ears. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay." Trevor woke to the smell of smoke. He bolted upright, his father instincts screaming danger. He sprinted to the kitchen and stopped dead. The triplets had apparently decided that their guest needed breakfast. The scene was catastrophic. Flour coated every visible surface, counters, floor, somehow the ceiling. An entire box of cereal formed a crunchy carpet. Riley stood on a chair, reaching for the smoking pan on the stove. "What are you doing?" Trevor yelped, yanking Riley away from the heat. "Making pancakes for the sad lady," Zoe announced, "so she'd feel better," Ivy added, her bottom lip already trembling at her father's tone. Trevor turned off the burner. The pancakes were charcoal discs. He surveyed the wreckage and felt his frustration rising. Then he saw their faces. 3 pairs of eyes looking up at him with such pure, desperate hope. "Please, Daddy, we wanted to surprise her, but we messed it up." "Can you help us?" Zoe asked. "Please?" Trevor looked at the disaster, then at his daughters staring at him with their usual puppy eyes, wide, pleading, impossible to resist. The kitchen was destroyed. This was objectively a terrible idea. But those eyes were his weakness, his absolute downfall. He'd never figured out how to say no to them. "Okay," he heard himself say, "but we do this properly and quickly."
The girls erupted in excited squeals, immediately clustering around him as he pulled out fresh ingredients. Trevor worked fast, mixing batter, heating the griddle properly, guiding small hands as they helped pour and flip. 20 minutes later, they had a plate of actual, edible pancakes along with scrambled eggs and toast. The triplets arranged everything carefully on a tray, adding a glass of orange juice and a paper napkin folded into a lopsided triangle. "Can we take it to her?" Riley asked. Trevor hesitated. The woman, Alicia, was still a stranger, but his daughters' faces were so full of hope and goodness that he couldn't bear to crush it. "Go ahead, but knock first, and if she's sleeping, come right back out." The triplets moved as one unit, carrying the tray with the careful concentration of people transporting something precious. Trevor followed quietly, staying back but close enough to intervene if needed. They knocked softly on the living room doorframe. "Miss Alicia?" Ivy called out. "Are you awake?" There was movement from the couch. Alicia sat up slowly, disoriented, her hair tangled and her eyes still heavy with sleep. When she saw the 3 girls standing there with a breakfast tray, her expression shifted through confusion, then recognition, then something that looked almost like pain. "We made you breakfast," Zoe announced proudly. "Well, Daddy helped because we burned the first ones. But we wanted to do something nice for you," Ivy added quickly. The girls approached carefully and set the tray on the coffee table in front of Alicia. She stared at the slightly uneven pancakes, the scrambled eggs still steaming, the crooked napkin triangle, like she'd never seen food before. From the doorway, Trevor watched her face, watched the exact moment her careful composure shattered. Alicia's hand came up to cover her mouth, her eyes filled with tears that spilled over before she could stop them. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to—" "Are you sad?" asked Riley, immediately concerned. "We didn't want to make you sad." "No, sweetie, no." Alicia shook her head, wiping frantically at her tears. "These are happy tears, I promise. This is the kindest thing anyone's done for me in so long." She reached out hesitantly, and the girls immediately moved into her arms. Alicia hugged them tightly, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs she was trying desperately to control. Trevor felt his own throat tighten. He understood exactly what was happening. This woman, this stranger who'd lost everything, was being offered something she'd stopped believing existed. Simple, uncomplicated kindness. After a moment, Alicia pulled back, wiping her face and trying to compose herself. She looked at the breakfast tray again. "This looks amazing," she said, her voice still thick with emotion. "Will you stay and eat with me? I don't think I can finish all this by myself." The girls looked back at Trevor for permission. He nodded, and they climbed onto the couch beside Alicia, chattering away as she picked up a fork with trembling hands.
Trevor quietly retreated to the kitchen to start cleaning the flour explosion, but he kept glancing back. Alicia ate slowly, listening as the girls told her about their school, their friends, their favorite colors. She asked questions, smiled at their jokes, and with every moment Trevor saw her shoulders drop a little more from around her ears. She was beginning to feel safe. And Trevor realized with sudden, uncomfortable clarity that he was going to have a very hard time letting this stranger leave. Breakfast became a moment frozen in time. After they'd eaten, the girls dragged Alicia to their bedroom to show her their toys, their drawings, their entire world compressed into one small shared room. Trevor cleaned the kitchen, listening to their laughter echo down the hallway. It was Christmas morning, he realized. He'd almost forgotten in the chaos. When the girls finally released Alicia from their enthusiastic tour, Trevor found them all in the living room. Riley was showing Alicia the small artificial tree they decorated together, pointing out each ornament and explaining its significance. "This one's from when we were babies," Riley said, holding up a silver rattle. "Daddy says Mommy picked it out before we were born." Alicia's expression softened. "It's beautiful." "Do you have a mommy?" Ivy asked, with the blunt curiosity of a 5-year-old. "Ivy," Trevor warned gently. "It's okay," Alicia smiled sadly. "I did. She left when I was very little. I don't really remember her." "That's sad," Zoe said matter-of-factly. "But you can share our daddy if you want. He's really good at being a parent." Trevor felt his face heat. "Girls." "Daddy!" Riley interrupted, suddenly bouncing with excitement. "It's snowing! Can we go outside, please?" Trevor looked out the window. Fat snowflakes were falling steadily, blanketing the world in white. The girls pressed their faces against the glass, their breath fogging up the panes. "Please, Daddy," they chorused. He glanced at Alicia, who was watching the snow with an expression he couldn't quite read. Longing, maybe, or remembering something bittersweet. "What do you say?" Trevor asked her. "Want to help 3 crazy kids build a snowman?" Alicia blinked, surprised to be included. I don't have proper clothes for—" "We'll figure it out," Trevor said. "Come on, it's Christmas." 20 minutes later, they were all bundled up. Trevor had found an old jacket of Vanessa's for Alicia. It was slightly too small, but it would work. The girls wore their mismatched snow gear, each one a different color, looking like a parade of tiny winter warriors. The apartment complex's courtyard was already filled with families. Kids shrieked and threw snowballs. Parents sipped coffee and watched from the sidelines. Christmas music drifted from someone's open window. Okay, Operation Snowman is officially underway. The girls immediately started gathering snow with more enthusiasm than technique. Alicia stood awkwardly to the side at first, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to participate. "You're not getting out of this," Trevor said, grinning. "Everyone builds." Something shifted in Alicia's face. She bent down and scooped up snow, her movements tentative at first, then more confident. Soon, she was laughing as Ivy dumped an entire armful of snow on her boots. They built the most lopsided snowman Trevor had ever seen. Its head tilted dangerously to one side, the stick arms were different lengths, but the girls were so proud they practically glowed. "He needs a face," Riley declared.
They scrounged for rocks and found a carrot in Trevor's jacket pocket, left over from yesterday's lunch packing. The snowman ended up with a crooked smile and mismatched eyes, but it was perfect in its imperfection. "What should we name him?" Zoe asked. "Frosty," Ivy shouted. "That's boring," Riley argued. "How about Mr. Snowbottom?" Trevor snorted. "Mr. Snowbottom it is." Alicia laughed, really laughed, and the sound was so genuine and free that Trevor found himself staring. This was what joy looked like on her. He wanted to see it again and again. The girls started a snowball fight that quickly devolved into chaos. Trevor got pelted from 3 directions at once. Alicia tried to stay neutral, until Zoe declared her on Teen Girls Against Daddy.
"Betrayal!" Trevor yelled dramatically, falling into a snowbank. The girls piled on top of him, giggling uncontrollably. Alicia stood over them, smiling, and for just a moment they looked like what they weren't yet, but might become: a family. By early afternoon, they were back inside, cold and exhausted. Trevor made hot chocolate while the girls changed into dry clothes. Alicia sat at the kitchen table, her cheeks still flushed from the cold, her hair damp and curling. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For including me. For—" She paused, searching for words. "For making me feel human again." Trevor set a mug in front of her. "You are human. You always were. It doesn't feel that way when you're invisible." They were quiet for a moment, listening to the girls argue about which movie to watch. "Can I ask what happened?" Trevor said carefully. "You don't have to tell me, but if you want to." Alicia wrapped her hands around the mug, staring into the steam. For a long moment, Trevor thought she wouldn't answer. Then she began.
"My father was William Jameson." Trevor's eyes widened. Even he knew that name. Real estate magnate, philanthropist. His face had been on magazine covers. "He was also married," Alicia continued, her voice steady but distant, "to a woman who wasn't my mother. My mother was the housekeeper. Their affair was brief. When she got pregnant, she paid her to disappear. I was 2 years old when she left. I don't remember her at all." Trevor stayed quiet, letting her speak. "My father couldn't acknowledge me publicly. It would have destroyed his reputation, his marriage, his empire. So he kept me hidden. Separate houses, private tutors, birthdays celebrated in places where nobody would recognize him." Her voice cracked slightly. "He'd call me his sunshine, his only honest thing in a dishonest life, but only when we were alone, never where it mattered." She took a shaky breath. "I thought that was love. I thought being a secret meant being special. I didn't realize until much later that I was just convenient, a guilt project he could fund from a distance." "Alicia, let me finish, please." She looked up, her eyes glistening. "He had a heart attack in September. Massive. He was gone before the ambulance arrived. I found out from the news." Trevor's chest tightened. "The funeral was this massive spectacle. Hundreds of people, politicians, business associates. His widow gave this beautiful eulogy about her devoted husband." Alicia's laugh was bitter. "I watched from across the street, hidden, like always. Within 2 weeks, Eleanor, his widow, froze all my accounts, challenged the will, hired lawyers who cost more than most people make in a year, and I had nothing to fight back with. No documentation proving he was my father. My birth certificate only lists my mother's name. There were no adoption papers, no legal acknowledgement. He'd been too careful." Her hands trembled around the mug.
"The pet house I lived in, not in my name. The money, all through a trust she was able to contest. My lawyer said I had no legal standing, that without proof of paternity I was nobody to William Jameson. And I couldn't prove it because he'd spent my entire life hiding me." A tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "I had a boyfriend, Derek. He said we'd figure it out together. For 2 months, I believed him. I cooked and cleaned and tried to be useful while he paid for everything. Then one night I saw a text on his phone. He was telling his friend he only stayed with me for the perks and the provisions. That now I was just depressing." Trevor felt rage build in his chest. "Alicia, I left that night. 2 garbage bags of clothes and nowhere to go. The shelters were full. They're always full during the holidays. Everyone wants to help, but there aren't enough beds." Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "I've been on the streets for almost a month. Washing dishes when I could, cleaning offices at night, trying to stay invisible so I'd be safe, trying to remember what it felt like to be human." She finally looked at Trevor, and the raw pain in her eyes nearly broke him. Yesterday was the worst day. I hadn't eaten in 2 days. I had nowhere to sleep. And I gave up. I sat at that bus stop and cried because I couldn't think of a single reason to keep going. Her voice cracked. And then, your daughters appeared. 3 perfect strangers who looked at me and saw someone worth saving. The silence that followed was heavy with shared pain.
Trevor moved his chair closer. I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserved so much better. Did I? Because some days I think maybe I deserved exactly what I got. Maybe... Stop. Trevor's voice was firm but gentle. None of that was your fault. Not your father's choices, not your stepmother's cruelty, not your boyfriend's cowardice. You were failed by every person who should have protected you. Alicia's face crumpled. She pressed her hands over her mouth, trying to hold back sobs. But my daughters didn't fail you, Trevor continued softly. They saw you. Really saw you. And they were right. You're worth saving, Alicia. You always were. She broke then. Really broke. Tears came in waves. Grief and relief and exhaustion all pouring out at once. Trevor didn't try to stop her. He just moved closer, offering his presence as an anchor. When she finally calmed, her voice was hoarse. Why are you being so kind to me? Because I know what it's like to drown, Trevor said simply. He told her then. About Vanessa. About the pregnancy complications they'd tried not to worry about. The day that should have been the happiest of his life, turning into the worst. Amniotic fluid embolism, the medical term still foreign on his tongue even after 5 years. The doctors said it was rare, unpredictable. Nothing anyone could have done, but that didn't make her any less gone.
Alicia listened, her eyes never leaving his face. They handed me 3 babies, and I'd never felt more terrified in my life. I didn't know how to change a diaper, didn't know why they were crying or how to make them stop. I was grieving and exhausted and completely lost. He swallowed hard. My sister moved in for the first 6 months. Friends brought meals. The community showed up in ways I'll never be able to repay. But eventually, everyone went back to their lives, and it was just me and 3 babies who needed everything I didn't know how to give. But you figured it out, Alicia said softly. Barely. Most days I'm still figuring it out. Trevor looked toward the living room where his daughters were now singing along to a movie. They ask about having a mother sometimes. Not cruelly, just factually. Like they're missing a piece of the puzzle. And I can't give them that. I can't be both parents no matter how hard I try. You're an amazing father, Trevor. I'm a tired father who burns dinner and forgets library books and can't do French braids to save his life. He turned back to her. But I keep showing up because that's all we can do, right? Keep showing up even when we're drowning. They sat in shared understanding. 2 people who'd been broken by loss and were still trying to figure out how to be whole. Stay, Trevor said suddenly. The word came out before he'd fully thought it through, but he didn't take it back. Not just tonight. Stay until you figure out your next steps. Help with the girls if you want. Let us help you. You don't have to do this alone anymore. Alicia stared at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. Trevor, that's insane. You don't know me. So I'll get to know you, and you'll get to know us. He ran a hand through his hair. Look, maybe this is crazy. Maybe it's the worst idea I've ever had. But my daughters ran toward you when every adult in your life ran away. I trust their instincts. What if I mess this up? What if I... Then you'll mess it up and we'll figure it out together. Trevor's voice was firm. You're not a project, Alicia. You're not charity. This is me offering partnership. Help with the girls, with the apartment, with whatever feels right. And in return, you get time and space to rebuild. Alicia's eyes filled with fresh tears. Why would you do this for a stranger? Because someone did it for me when Vanessa died. Because kindness is the only thing that makes this world bearable. Because... He paused, searching for truth. Because my daughters saw something in you worth fighting for. And I believe them. Alicia sat with that, really sat with it. Trevor could see the war happening behind her eyes, the part that wanted to believe, fighting the part that had learned not to trust. Finally, she whispered, "Okay, I'll stay, but only until I can stand on my own, and I contribute. I'm not taking charity." "Partnership," Trevor corrected. "Partnership," Alicia agreed, her voice stronger now. They shook hands across the table, and in that moment, neither of them realized they'd just made a decision that would change both their lives forever. From the living room came a delighted shout. "Daddy, Miss Alicia, come watch with us!" Trevor stood, offering his hand to help Alicia up. She took it, and they walked together toward the living room where 3 little girls were making space on the couch. "You have to sit in the middle," Riley announced to Alicia.
"So you can be part of the family hug," Zoe explained. "It's tradition," Ivy added seriously. Alicia looked at Trevor, uncertainty written across her face. He nodded encouragement. She sat down, and immediately the girls curled around her like puppies seeking warmth. Trevor took the end spot, and they watched the movie together as snow continued to fall outside. It was the strangest Christmas Trevor had ever had. It was also, somehow, one of the best. The next few months were an adjustment. Alicia threw herself into helping with an intensity that bordered on desperation. She cleaned obsessively, cooked elaborate meals, did laundry before Trevor even noticed the hamper was full. She was trying to earn her place, to prove her value, to make herself indispensable. Trevor recognized the behavior. He'd done the same thing after Vanessa died, worked himself to exhaustion so he wouldn't have time to feel. "You don't have to do all this," he said one evening, finding her scrubbing the kitchen at 10 o'clock. "I want to help." "I know, but you're allowed to just exist here, without earning it." Alicia's hand stilled. "I don't know how to do that." "Then learn with us," Trevor said gently. The girls made it easier. They demanded Alicia's attention in ways that didn't feel transactional. They wanted her to read stories, play dress-up, judge their competitions for who could spin the longest without falling. Trevor watched Alicia slowly unfold, saw the tight anxiety in her shoulders gradually release, heard her laugh more freely, noticed the exact moment she stopped asking permission before making herself tea. She was settling in, becoming part of our rhythm. And Trevor was falling in love. It happened in small, devastating moments. The way Alicia hummed while folding laundry, completely unaware she was being watched. How she'd leave sticky notes with terrible jokes on his bathroom mirror. The morning he found her sleeping on the floor of the girls' room because she had fallen asleep mid-story. The way she looked at his daughters, not with pity or obligation, but with genuine affection. The way she looked at him sometimes, when she thought he wasn't paying attention. But Trevor was terrified. What if he was reading this wrong? What if she just saw him as a friend, a safe harbor before moving on to her real life? What if confessing his feelings would scare her away and break his daughters' hearts? So he stayed quiet, swallowed his feelings, told himself friendship was enough. It wasn't. The breakthrough came on a random Tuesday. Trevor came home from work to find Alicia sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a newspaper circled with red pen marks. Job listings. "Hey," he said carefully, "find anything good?" "No," her voice was flat. "Nobody wants to hire someone with a 3-month gap in employment and no references. Turns out my father's colleagues don't want to vouch for the secret daughter." Trevor sat across from her. "You'll find something." "Will I? Because I'm starting to think I'm unemployable, that I'm going to be dependent on your generosity forever." She laughed bitterly. "Some partnership." "Hey." Trevor waited until she looked at him. "You're not a burden. You're family. I'm a charity case who's overstayed her welcome." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" Alicia's voice rose. "Be honest, Trevor. How long can this really work? Eventually, the girls will start school full-time and you won't need help. Eventually, you'll want your space back. Eventually, eventually, I'm going to have to tell you I'm in love with you and risk ruining everything. The words escaped before Trevor could stop them. Alicia froze. What? Trevor's heart hammered. He'd said it. No taking it back now. I'm in love with you, he repeated, his voice steadier this time. I have been for months, maybe longer. I know the timing is terrible, and I know you've got enough on your plate without me adding this complication, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it. You're not temporary, Alicia. At least, I don't want you to be. Alicia stared at him, her expression unreadable. Trevor braced for rejection, for her to say this was too much, too fast, too complicated. Instead, she started crying. I love you too, she choked out. I've been terrified to admit it because I thought you were just being kind. I thought this was pity. I thought... Trevor was around the table before she could finish. He cupped her face gently, wiping tears with his thumbs. This isn't pity. It's love. Messy, complicated, probably bad timing love. But it's real. Are you sure? Because I come with nothing, Trevor. No money, no prospects, no... You come with you. That's everything. When he kissed her, it felt like every broken piece sliding into place, like finding something you didn't know you'd been searching for. From the hallway came a delighted shriek. Daddy's kissing Alicia! They broke apart to find 3 pajama-clad triplets jumping up and down with pure, unfiltered joy. Does this mean Alicia's our mama now? Riley asked hopefully. Trevor looked at Alicia, who looked back at him, both of them laughing through tears. Yeah, Alicia said, pulling the girls into a hug. Yeah, I think it does. The next 6 months were the happiest of Trevor's life. Alicia found work at a local bakery, modest hours, modest pay, but it gave her independence and purpose. She started smiling more, laughing freely. The haunted look in her eyes faded, replaced with something that looked like hope. The girls thrived. Their teachers commented on how settled they seemed. Riley's anxiety improved. Zoe's grades jumped. Ivy stopped having nightmares. And Trevor felt like he could breathe for the first time in 5 years. They moved carefully, deliberately. Alicia still slept on the couch. They didn't rush physical intimacy beyond kissing. They were building a foundation, not a fantasy. But Trevor knew he wanted forever. He just didn't know how much forever was about to change. The knock came on a quiet afternoon in October. Alicia was home alone, folding laundry, when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find a distinguished older man in an expensive suit, holding a leather briefcase. Are you Alicia Jameson? Her blood went cold. Yes? My name is Richard Hartwell. I was your father's attorney. May I come in?
Alicia's hands trembled as she let him in. Richard sat at their small dining table with the efficiency of someone who delivered life-changing news before. Your father knew exactly what would happen when he died, Richard began. He'd been preparing for years. The trust your stepmother seized was a decoy. The real estate, he slid papers across the table. This is what he actually left you. Alicia couldn't process the numbers. Too many zeros. It had to be a mistake. $2 billion, Richard said quietly. Properties, investments, liquid assets, offshore accounts, hidden from probate. All legally yours. Your stepmother can't touch any of it. The room spun. Why didn't you tell me before? Your father's instructions were explicit. Wait 1 full year. His words were, let her discover her worth without wealth. Let her build a real life. Then give her the tools to protect it. Richard handed her an envelope. He also left you this. Alicia opened it with shaking hands. My dearest sunshine, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you've survived what I feared most. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you openly. I was a coward.
But I need you to know everything I did was to ensure you'd be truly free, not dependent on money or my name. I wanted you to find your strength first. By now, you know what real love looks like. You've learned who you are without wealth. That knowledge is worth more than any inheritance. But I'm leaving it anyway. Build the life you deserve. Help people who need it. Be the light I always knew you were. You were never my shame. You were always my pride. All my love, Dad. Alicia sobbed. Grief and relief crashed over her in waves. Her father had seen her, truly seen her. Even in death, he was protecting her. When Trevor came home hours later, he found her surrounded by papers, eyes red but radiant. "What happened?" he asked. "Everything changed," Alicia whispered. "Everything changed." $2 billion? Trevor repeated the third time, still not comprehending.
They sat on the couch, papers spread across the coffee table. Alicia had explained everything: the hidden estate, her father's plan, the attorney's revelation. "Yes, you're a billionaire, apparently." They stared at each other, then, inexplicably, started laughing. Deep, slightly hysterical laughter that released months of tension. "I don't want this to change us," Alicia said when they'd calmed. "I don't want to lose this." Trevor took her hands. "It doesn't change who you are. But Alicia, it changes what's possible." Over the next weeks, they made plans. Alicia established a foundation for homeless individuals, funding shelters, job training, legal aid. She created scholarships for foster children, made anonymous donations to families drowning in medical debt. People helped me when I had nothing. I want to be that for others. For themselves, they were modest. A larger house with space for everyone, security and comfort, not excess. College funds for the girls. I spent my childhood with everything and feeling empty. I want them to have enough and know they have everything. 12 months later, Trevor proposed. He did it at home, with the triplets as co-conspirators. They'd spent the morning making decorations, handmade "Will you marry our daddy" signs in crayon covering every surface. When Alicia walked in from grocery shopping, Trevor was kneeling in their living room, the girls standing beside him like the world's cutest backup singers. "We're already a family," Trevor said, his voice thick. "But I want to make it official. Will you marry me?" Alicia didn't hesitate. Yes, 1,000 times yes. The wedding was small and perfect. Close friends, Trevor's sister Michelle, and 3 flower girls who took their jobs very seriously. Alicia wore a simple dress. Trevor cried during his vows. The girls presented Alicia with a handmade card, "The best mama ever." Judge Henderson, who had prepared Trevor's taxes for years, officiated with appropriate humor. "I now pronounce you husband and wife and officially declare this the world's luckiest family." 3 years later, Trevor stood in the audience of Maplewood Elementary's spring concert, watching his daughters perform. At 8 years old, Riley, Zoe, and Ivy were confident, radiant girls who'd never known anything but love. They sang a song they'd written themselves about family, about home, about how the best things arrive when you least expect them. Alicia squeezed his hand, tears streaming. "They're incredible." "They learn from the best," Trevor whispered. After the performance, they drove to the cemetery together. The girls placed flowers on Vanessa's grave while Trevor and Alicia stood back. "We talk about her every month," Alicia said softly. "Her favorite things, her dreams for them, how much she loved them." "Thank you," Trevor managed, "for never making them choose, for honoring her." "She gave me this family," Alicia said simply. "I'll never let them forget that." That night, Trevor and Alicia sat on their back porch under emerging stars. "Do you ever think about that night, how close we came to never meeting?" "Every day," Alicia admitted. "I'd given up. I was at the absolute end." "What changed?" 3 little girls who refused to let a stranger suffer, who offered love instead of judgment. She smiled. "They saved me, Trev. Before I ever did anything for them, they saved me." Trevor pulled her close. "You saved us right back."
We saved each other, Alicia corrected. That's what family does. Inside, one of the girls called out, probably a nightmare or a water request. Alicia stood, but Trevor caught her hand. I love you. In case you forgot, since 20 minutes ago. Alicia laughed, warm and free. I love you too. Now come on, parenting calls. They walked inside together, toward their beautiful chaos, toward the children they loved beyond measure, toward a future built on the unlikeliest foundation. 3 little hearts who'd known exactly what they needed, and 2 broken people brave enough to believe they deserved to be whole. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end here. Let it remind you that kindness still changes lives, that hope is never wasted, that sometimes the family we need finds us when we've stopped looking. Subscribe to Soul Lift Stories, where every story lifts the spirit and reminds us that light always finds its way back. And if this moved you, share it, because sometimes sharing hope is the kindest thing we can do.